My name is Marcus Hale, and I work homicide in Detroit. Every time I fall asleep, I wake up inside someone who died and was never found. It started as a fluke, the kind of thing you blame on stress. Back then, I had a partner named Alina Ruiz, a captain named Gerald Vance, and a small apartment that smelled like old coffee. I was good at my job, but not special. Then I closed a case that should have stayed cold, and everything changed. It happened after a double shift, the kind that makes your bones hum. I got home, sat on the edge of my bed, and told myself I would rest my eyes. I woke up on wet grass, face down, with mud pressed into my lips. For a second, I thought I had been jumped, dragged outside, dumped. Then I tried to breathe, and nothing worked right. My chest was heavy, my throat full, my tongue too thick. I rolled onto my back and saw a sky I did not recognize. The air smelled like gasoline and old leaves. I lifted my hands, and they were not my hands. They were small, pale, with chipped black polish on the nails. There was a ring on the left middle finger, cheap metal, scratched dull. I sat up and my neck screamed, sharp and wrong. Something had happened to this body, something final. I looked down and saw a shirt torn at the collar. I saw a bruise blooming in the shape of a hand. I saw blood dried near the ear, stiff like paint. I tried to stand, and the world tilted like it wanted me to vomit. That is when I heard water. Not a river, not waves, just the steady drip of somewhere close. I turned my head and saw a storm drain. The grate was bent, and the dark below it felt like a mouth. I knew, without knowing how, that this person had been shoved down there. I knew there had been a struggle, and a shoe had come off. I knew the shoe was not far. My eyes dragged toward a patch of weeds and found it. A white sneaker, half buried, laces snapped. The feeling hit me next, not like a thought, but like a flash of taste. Panic, sour and metallic, like sucking pennies. A voice, low and calm, telling her to stop fighting. A laugh after that, breathy, almost bored. Then a hard jerk and darkness. I gasped and my lungs stuttered, like they remembered drowning. I crawled to the curb and retched mud and something darker. Then the street light above me flickered and the world snapped. I woke up in my own bed, choking, with my sheets twisted around my legs. My mouth was full of dirt. Real dirt. I spit into my palm and stared at it. There were small blades of grass stuck to my tongue. I ran to my bathroom, turned on the light, and checked myself. No bruises, no torn collar, no blood by my ear. Just my own face, gray with exhaustion, eyes wide like a cornered animal. I told myself it was a nightmare. I told myself I had sleepwalked maybe. I called in sick because my hands would not stop shaking. That afternoon, I turned on the news, more as noise than interest. A reporter stood near a storm drain on the east side. She talked about a missing woman, last seen 3 weeks ago. They found her shoe in the weeds, she said. I felt my stomach drop like an elevator cable snapped. The camera panned, and I recognized the streetlight. I recognized the bent grate. I recognized the patch of grass where my face had been. I drove down there without thinking. I stood behind the police tape like a civilian because I was not assigned. A tech looked at me like I was trouble. A uniform told me to step back. I stared at the storm drain and listened to water drip. My throat tightened and I tasted pennies again. A body had been down there and everyone had missed it. Except me. That night I went to work and asked to see the case file. Captain Vance gave me a look that said I was hunting ghosts. He still handed it over because he trusted my instincts then. The missing woman was named Kayla Benton. She was 21, and her mother had called every day. They had searched alleys, vacant lots, the river, even the old factory yards. They never checked that storm drain. I wrote a request for a search crew, and I made it sound routine. The next morning, they pulled her out. They pulled out bones and fabric and hair tangled in metal. When they wheeled her bag into the morgue, Dr. Priya Shah met it with a tired face. She had seen too much death to be surprised by another. I stood in the doorway, and my knees felt weak. I had been inside her. I had felt her last seconds. I had swallowed mud for her. Alina cornered me after, in the break room. She asked how I knew. I told her I had a hunch, and she stared like she did not buy it. Alina was sharp, and she hated miracles. She said my hunches were turning into maps. She said it was starting to scare her. I laughed too hard and changed the subject. That should have been my warning. That should have been the point where I stepped away. Instead, I leaned in. I started sleeping on purpose. At first, I did not mean to. It happened the way it always does in police work, by accident. A case drags you down, and you blink, and your head dips. You wake up with your cheek stuck to a file folder. The second time it happened, I was at my desk. I had been staring at photos of a hit and run. A man reduced to red and glass. I must have drifted for a minute. I woke up in a ditch, face pressed into cold gravel. My knees were scraped and my palms burned. Cars hissed by, close enough that the wind slapped my face. I tried to stand, and my left leg refused. Pain shot up, white and nauseating. I looked down and saw bone pushing against skin, sharp as a broken spoon. I heard a horn, long and angry. Then I saw headlights swerving. I knew I was in the man from the photos. I knew I was in the moment after impact. His last thought was not fear. It was confusion, thick and slow, like syrup. Why did they not stop? Why did they not stop? Then the world snapped again. I woke at my desk with my hands clenched, nails dug into my palms. There were tiny stones in my cuffs, like someone had poured grit into my sleeves. My left leg ached deep in the joint, like an old injury. I limped to the bathroom and stared at myself. No broken bone, no blood. But the pain was there, ghosting under my skin. I pulled the traffic camera footage because I could not help it. I found the moment. I watched the car clip him, a dark blur, then speed away. I paused on the frame where the plate flashed in the streetlight. The number and letters burned into my head like a brand. I wrote it down, hands steady, and sent it to Alina as a lead. We arrested a man that afternoon. He cried, said he did not see him, said he panicked. Captain Vance praised my work. Alina watched me like I had grown a second shadow. After that, the department started calling me lucky. They joked that I could smell lies. They said I should buy a lottery ticket. I laughed with them because it was easier than telling the truth. The truth was this: I was falling asleep and waking in tragedy. I was riding the dead like they were borrowed cars. I was stealing their last seconds and using them like evidence. It made me good at my job, and it made me sick. The power did not come with instructions. It came with consequences. The first consequence was that I did not get to choose. If I slept, it happened. It could be a nap, a blink, a drift on a bus. It could be a full night, and then I would be gone for hours. I would wake in my own bed with a mouth full of river water. I would cough up sand and wonder how long my body had been alone. The second consequence was that the bodies were never peaceful. Nobody died in bed, surrounded by family. Nobody slipped away with soft music and kind hands. Every body I woke in had a story that ended hard. There were women in abandoned houses. There were men in burning cars. There were kids in basements, lungs tight with mold and fear. There were people who drowned, people who froze, people who bled out slow. And the worst part was always the same. The moment I woke inside them, I knew they were already gone. The body moved, but the person was not there. I was alone in the ruin, After a month, I started keeping notes. Not case notes, not official ones. Private rules, written in a cheap notebook I kept in my jacket. I did it because my life started slipping. I would wake up and not remember how I got home. I would look at my hands and feel wrong for a second. I would hear someone call my name and flinch because it sounded like a threat. I wrote rules to anchor myself. I wrote them like prayers because I was running out of options. Rule 1: do not fall asleep anywhere you cannot lock a door. Rule 2: do not drink before bed because you will wake up needing air. Rule 3: leave a light on because darkness follows you back. Rule 4: when you wake up in another body, do not look for a mirror. Rule 5: when you return, wash your mouth before you speak to anyone. Rule 6: do not tell anyone the full truth because they will test it. Rule 7: if you feel a name in your mouth, write it down immediately. Rule 8: if you wake up and you are still moving, run. Those rules came from patterns. They came from mistakes. The mirror rule came after I woke up in a girl who had been strangled in a motel. I sat up in a bed that smelled like bleach and sweat. There were fingerprints on her throat, purple and swollen. I stumbled into the bathroom and saw her face in the glass. Her eyes were open, and they were not mine. I froze, and something behind the glass smiled. Not her, not me. Something thin and pleased, like it had been watching. The smile widened until the skin at the corners split. Then I blinked, and I was back in my bed, heart pounding. I did not sleep for 2 days after that. The light rule came after I woke up in a man who had burned. I was on pavement, and heat licked under my ribs. The air tasted like melted plastic. I rolled and saw flames on my sleeves, crawling like insects. I screamed, and the scream came out wet and broken. When I snapped back, my own arms were red, as if sunburned. Blisters rose in a line down my forearm. Dr. Shaw looked at them later and asked if I had been in a fire. I lied and said I spilled hot oil cooking. She did not believe me, but she did not press. The running rule came later, after the power shifted. For a while, it was always the dead, always the found too late. Then I woke up inside someone who was not dead yet. I did not understand it at first. I woke up on a concrete floor, cheek pressed to cold. My wrists were bound behind my back, rope biting deep. My mouth was taped, and my breathing echoed in a small room. A bulb swung overhead, and the walls were cinder block. I tried to move, and pain sparked through my shoulders. The body I was in was alive, shaking, sweating. I could feel the heartbeat. Fast, desperate, real. I heard footsteps above, slow and casual. I heard humming soft, like someone making dinner. The person in this body had been here for days. Their fear had a stale taste, like old pennies and sweat. Then I heard a door open and a man spoke. He sounded bored, like this was routine. He said it was almost time. The body I was in started sobbing under the tape. I tried to think, tried to pull at the rope, tried to do anything. Then my own name flashed in my head, sharp as a siren. Marcus, not as a memory, as a call. The bulb flickered and the room dimmed. In the dark, something moved near the corner. Something that should not have been there. A shape like a person, but flattened, like a shadow peeled off a wall. It leaned closer, and I felt a pressure in my ears, like deep water. The man upstairs stopped humming. He went quiet, then muttered a curse. He said he hated when this happened. He said it was not supposed to happen until after. He came down the stairs fast. The door swung open and light poured in. The man looked right at me, right at the eyes of the body I wore. He smiled like he recognized a guest. He said he had been wondering when I would show. Then the world snapped, and I was back in my bed, gasping. I sat up so hard my back popped. My wrists burned, rope marks ghosting on my skin. I ran to the sink and scrubbed my mouth until it bled. I could still taste tape adhesive. I went to work and pulled missing persons reports until my eyes blurred. I knew the room, not by address, not by map, by smell, by sound, by the way the bulb swung. It was in a neighborhood off the beaten patrol routes. It was near a train yard because I heard distant clanks. It was near a diner because I smelled frying oil through a vent. Elena found me in records, surrounded by photos and coffee cups. She asked what I was doing. I told her I had a lead, and her jaw tightened. Captain Vance walked in and asked why I was stepping outside procedure. I told him I had a gut feeling, and he stared at me a long time. He said my gut was going to get someone killed if it was wrong. I told him it was not wrong. We got a warrant based on a mix of luck and paperwork. We hit the house with uniforms, and Elena stayed close to me. The basement was real. The bulb was swinging. The rope was still tied to a pipe. But the person was gone. The man who owned the house was gone too. On the floor was a strip of gray tape, curled like a tongue. On the wall, scratched into the paint, was a word. Tail. My last name. Elena saw it, and her face went white. She looked at me and asked, finally, how? I tried to lie, but the air felt too thin. I told her I did not know how, only that I knew. She said I was either the luckiest detective alive or the worst liar she had met. Then she said something that made my stomach twist. She said the man was not in any database. No license, no record, no prints on file. He was like a ghost. Captain Vance called it a dead end. He said we would keep looking, but his voice lacked faith. Elena did not let it go. She started watching me. She started noticing when I flinched awake at my desk. She started noticing how I smelled like river water some mornings. She started noticing the dirt under my nails. She followed me once after shift and saw me sit in my car with the engine off. I was afraid to go home and sleep. She knocked on my window and told me to open the door. I did because I was too tired to fight. She sat in the passenger seat and stared forward. She said she had a brother who used to see things. She said he called them visits. She said he died young and nobody believed him. She asked me quietly if I was visiting. I told her no, because the word hit too close. She said she was going to prove it either way. She said if I would not tell her, she would force the truth out. That was the moment Rule 6 became real. People will test what they do not understand. And testing is how you break things. Elena started keeping me awake in stupid ways. She would slam a file on my desk if my eyes drooped. She would call my name sharp if my head nodded. She would walk me to my car like I was drunk. At first it felt like care. Then it felt like control. I went home and tried to sleep in fragments. 10 minutes here, 15 there. It did not matter. The power only needed a crack. One night, I sat on my couch with my shoes still on. My girlfriend Tessa was in the kitchen, making tea. Tessa was patient with my mood swings. She said she could handle stress, but she hated secrets. She asked why I woke up coughing some nights. She asked why I had nightmares that left bruises. I told her I was fine, and she stared at me like she had heard it too often. She came over, touched my cheek, and told me to take leave. She said my eyes looked haunted. I laughed because I did not know what else to do. I closed my eyes just for a second. When I opened them, I was in a car. Not my car. A small sedan that smelled like stale fries and cheap perfume. It was dark and rain hammered the windshield. My hands were on the wheel, shaking. The speedometer needle was high, and the road was a smear. A voice beside me was shouting, high and frantic. I turned my head and saw a young man in the passenger seat. His face was wet with tears and rain, and his mouth was open in a scream. He was looking at something behind us. Headlights close, too close. A truck tailgating, pushing, bullying the lane. The body I was in pressed the gas harder. Fear filled the chest, thick and choking. I understood in a flash. This was a chase. Not police. Something worse. The road curved, and the tires screamed. The car fishtailed, and my stomach rose. The young man grabbed my arm, nails digging in. He mouthed a word I could not hear over the rain. Help. Then the truck hit us. Metal shrieked, and the world spun. Glass exploded like ice. The car rolled, and the roof caved in. Pain flowered everywhere, bright and fast. Then darkness. I woke on my couch, screaming, hands clawing at air. Tessa dropped her mug, and it shattered on the tile. She ran to me, face pale, and asked what happened. I could not answer, because my mouth tasted like blood and rain. I coughed, and red flecked my lip. Tessa stared at it, then at me. She said this was not normal. She said we were going to the hospital. I told her no, too sharp. Rule 5. Wash your mouth before you speak to anyone. Because sometimes what comes back is evidence. I stumbled to the bathroom and spat into the sink. A sliver of glass fell out, tiny and clear. I stared at it, shaking. Tessa was in the doorway, eyes wide, hands trembling. She asked me what I was. Not who. What? I told her I did not know. She backed away like I was contagious. That night she slept with the bedroom door locked. I slept on the couch with the light on. And when I finally drifted, it happened again. I woke up in cold water. It was black and it pressed on my ears. My lungs burned, desperate for air. Hands thrashed, but the water held tight. Something heavy was tied to my ankle. I kicked and the body panicked, wild and animal. Above faint, there was moonlight rippling. So close, but impossible. I knew where I was. The Detroit River. I knew the sound, the distant engine hum, the way currents tugged. I tasted gasoline and algae. I tried to scream, but water filled my mouth. Then, in the dark, I felt something brush my leg. Not a fish, not debris, something deliberate. A hand. It slid down my calf, slow, almost gentle. Then it squeezed hard, like a warning. A voice spoke in my head, not as words, but as certainty. Stay. The current shifted and the moonlight dimmed. The hand tightened, pulling me down. I fought and my lungs tore. The world snapped, and I woke up on my couch, soaked. Water pooled under me, soaking the cushions. Tessa screamed from the hallway. She turned on the light and saw me dripping river water onto her floor. She saw the wet trail from the couch to the bathroom. She saw the way my teeth chattered like I was freezing. She demanded an explanation. Elena showed up at my door an hour later because Tessa called her. Tessa knew Elena was my partner, and she was desperate. Elena walked in, took one look at the soaked couch, and went still. She asked me quietly if it was the river. I did not answer. I did not have to. Elena sat down and rubbed her face like she was trying to wake up. Tessa stood in the corner, arms wrapped around herself, eyes wet. Elena asked me to tell her everything right then. I looked at both of them, and I felt a strange thing. A relief, like confessing could save me. Rule 6 screamed in my head. Do not tell anyone the full truth, because they will test it. But I was so tired. I told them. Not every detail, not the mirror smile, not the scratched hail on the wall, but enough. I told them I fell asleep and woke up in the dead. I told them it helped me solve cases. I told them it was getting worse. Elena listened without interrupting, face hard, eyes bright. Tessa cried silent tears, like her body did not know what else to do. When I finished, Elena said one thing. She said we could use this. She said we could save people. She said if I could wake up in the dead, I could find the living. She said we could catch the ghost man from the basement. That was when I realized something worse than the power. The power had found a place in other people's hunger. Elena did not want to understand me. She wanted to deploy me. Tessa wanted to run, and I could see it in her posture. She looked at me like I was a storm coming. Elena looked at me like I was a weapon. I stood between them and felt my life crack. The next day at work, Elena told Captain Vance I had a method. She did not say what. She hinted enough to make him curious. Captain Vance pulled me into his office and asked what was going on. He said my clearance rate was climbing fast. He said internal affairs was starting to ask questions. He said people were whispering about favors and leaks. He asked me flat if I was dirty. I told him no. He told me to prove it. He gave me a case, fresh, ugly, high profile. A young woman missing from downtown. No ransom call, no witnesses, no camera footage. just a purse found near an alley and a smear of blood on the strap. Captain Vance said I had 48 hours. He did not say it as a challenge. He said it like an ultimatum. Alina drove me to the evidence room after shift. She signed out the purse under her name. She set it on the table between us like it was an offering. She told me to sleep. I told her no. She told me we did not have time for my fear. She said a woman was out there and my rules could wait. I told her I could not control where I went. She said then we would roll the dice. That was the moment the rules stopped being mine. That was the moment I broke Rule 6. I went home and I could not stop shaking. Tessa was packing a bag when I walked in. She said she was staying with her sister for a while. She said she loved me, but she could not live with waking up to river water. She said she did not know if she was safe. I wanted to argue, but my mouth would not form words. She kissed my cheek, quick and sad, and left. I sat on my couch under the harsh light and stared at nothing. When I finally slept, it was not gentle. It was like falling into a hole. I woke up on a floor that smelled like bleach. My cheek was pressed to tile. My wrists were free, but my fingers were numb. There was tape residue on my lips. My throat hurt like someone had squeezed it. The room was different from the basement. This room had floral wallpaper peeling at the edges. There was a dresser in the corner, cheap wood, one drawer open. I tried to stand, and my knees buckled. My body was weak, dehydrated. I staggered to the wall and leaned, breathing hard. There was a sound behind me, soft. A door opening. Footsteps, slow, careful. A man stepped into view. I did not see his face at first. I saw his shoes, polished, clean. I saw his hands bare, nails trimmed. He carried a phone in one hand, the screen dark. He looked at me, and I felt recognition. Not mine, the body's. Terror surged, hot and sharp. This woman knew him. He smiled small and tilted his head. He said he could tell when I was here. He said my eyes were different. He stepped closer and I backed away. My spine hit the wall and my heart hammered. He raised the phone and turned on the screen. On it was a photo of my apartment building. He said he knew where I slept. He said he had been watching for weeks. He said he liked my work. He said I made his life interesting. He said he wanted to meet me properly. Then he did something that made my blood turn cold. He spoke my first name, Marcus, not as a guess. As a greeting, the room seemed to shrink. My ears filled with pressure, like the river again. The wallpaper pattern blurred at the edges, warping. In the corner near the dresser, the light dimmed. A shadow peeled away from the wall, slow and smooth. It stood upright, almost human. It leaned toward the man, and he did not flinch. He smiled wider, like he felt safe. He said it was time. He grabbed my wrist hard. His fingers were cold, too strong. He dragged me toward the dresser. The open drawer was deeper than it should have been. It was not full of clothes. It was full of darkness, thick as fabric. The shadow moved behind him, like a curtain being drawn. The man whispered, calm, like he was explaining a routine. He said the dead were doors. He said I walked through them. He said every time I visited, I left something behind. He said soon there would be enough of me to keep. I fought, but the body was weak. My nails scratched his wrist and drew a thin line of blood. He did not react. He shoved my hand into the drawer. Cold swallowed my fingers, then my wrist. The darkness gripped like wet clay, pulling. Pain flashed up my arm, deep, wrong. I screamed, and the scream came out ragged. The man leaned close to my ear. He said I should look at the mirror when I got back. He said he left something there for me. The shadow pressed in, and the room went dim. The wallpaper peeled in my vision like skin. My arm was being pulled into the drawer, inch by inch. I thought of my couch, my light, my rules. I thought of Tessa walking away with her bag. I thought of Alina telling me to sleep. I thought of Captain Vance setting a clock on my head. I tried to yank free, and my shoulder popped. The darkness surged up my arm like ice water. Then the world snapped, and I was back in my apartment. I was on the floor in front of my bathroom mirror. The light was on. The sink was running. My right arm was numb, fingers tingling. I looked down and saw bruises around my wrist, real dark. There was blood under my nails, not mine. I heard a sound in the mirror, soft. A breath that did not match mine. I remembered the rule, too late. Do not look for a mirror. My eyes lifted without permission. My reflection stared back, and something else stared with it. It was behind me in the glass, close, shoulder to shoulder. It was shaped like me, but wrong. The face was too smooth, the eyes too dark. The mouth stretched into that same pleased smile. It did not move when I moved. It stayed steady, like it had always been there. The reflection opened its mouth, and I heard my own voice. It said it missed the river. It said it missed the fire. It said it missed the basement. It said it was hungry for the rest. I stumbled back and hit the tub. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. I squeezed my eyes shut and counted breaths. When I opened them, the mirror was normal. My face was there, pale and shaking. But the air in the bathroom felt thicker. The next day, I went to work and did not tell Alina what happened. I did not tell Captain Vance. I did not tell anyone. I pulled the missing woman's file, the downtown purse case. Her name was Alina Mercer. Her last location was near the Riverwalk. Her phone pinged once near a warehouse district. I knew where she was now. Not by map. By the wallpaper, the dresser, the drawer. I drove there alone because I did not trust anyone. Rule 1. Do not fall asleep anywhere you cannot lock a door. I kept the car cold, windows cracked, music loud. I slapped my face at stoplights. I chewed bitter gum until my jaw ached. The warehouse was old, boarded, graffiti sprayed over broken windows. I found a side door with a fresh padlock. I cut it because I had the tools. Inside, the air was damp and smelled like mold and bleach. I moved slow, gun drawn, flashlight steady. My steps echoed on concrete. In the back, I found a staircase down. I heard a bulb swinging somewhere. I descended, heart pounding. The basement opened into a finished room, floral wallpaper peeling. The dresser was there. The drawer was open. The darkness inside it looked like spilled ink. Alina was not in the room. But there was evidence. A strip of gray tape. A hair tie on the floor. A smear of blood on the dresser edge. And on the wall, scratched into the wallpaper, was another word. Marcus. Not my last name. My first. My stomach turned. I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, careful, familiar. I backed into the corner, breathing quiet. The bulb swung, casting shadows that crawled. A man came down the stairs. Polished shoes, clean hands. He stopped at the doorway and looked around. He smiled like he knew I was there. He said he could smell when I was close. He stepped into the room and looked at the open drawer. He spoke softly, like he was talking to a friend. He said I was early. He said he did not expect me in my own skin. He said that was brave or stupid. He said he liked it either way. The shadow peeled off the wall behind him. It stood taller in this room, clearer. It leaned toward the drawer, like it was listening. The man turned his head slightly, and I realized he was listening too. Not to me, to something I could not hear. Then he said something that made my throat close. He said the visits were changing. He said the dead were starting to wake up. He said people like me were making holes. He said he was just taking advantage. He said soon it would not be just him. He said Detroit was full of places where nobody got found. He said those places were waking. I aimed my gun at his chest and told him to get on the ground. My voice sounded steady, but my hands shook. He laughed low and took a step forward. The shadow behind him rippled. The bulb dimmed. The drawer seemed to deepen, swallowing light. The man spread his hands, calm. He said I could shoot him. He said his body would drop, and I would wake up in it later. He said I would feel his last breath, and it would teach me nothing. He said if I wanted Elena, I had to sleep. He said she was still alive, but not for long. He said the only way to find her in time was to visit her. He said that was the bargain. I felt nausea rise. Rule 8. If you wake up and you are still moving, run. But I was not asleep. Not yet. The man took another step, and the shadow shifted. The air pressure thickened, squeezing my ears. I felt the pull in my eyelids, heavy, unnatural. Like the room itself was trying to make me blink. I realized then that the power was not only mine. This place could force it. The man smiled wider. He said, "Good night, Marcus." My vision blurred at the edges. I fought it, biting my tongue until I tasted blood. I dug my nails into my palm, sharp, grounding. The pull got stronger. The shadow leaned closer, and I felt cold against my cheek. I stumbled backward and hit the dresser. My shoulder bumped the open drawer. The darkness inside it surged, like it sensed contact. My breath hitched. I had one choice, and it was a terrible one. Sleep and maybe save her, or stay awake and die here. I thought of Tessa locking the bedroom door. I thought of Elena handing me the purse like an offering. I thought of Captain Vance saying 48 hours. I thought of all the faces I had worn, all the last seconds I had stolen. I closed my eyes. I let the pull take me. I woke up in a different room, smaller, colder. My hands were bound again. My mouth was taped again. My breathing was shallow, weak. A phone buzzed somewhere, far away. The body I wore was shaking. I knew with sick certainty that I was Elena. I could feel her fear, but there was something else too. Hope thin as thread, because she could feel that she was not alone now. Footsteps approached. The door opened. The man entered, humming softly. He looked at me and smiled. He said it was almost time. He raised a hand, and behind him the shadow filled the doorway. The shadow's face was not a face, just smooth dark. But I felt its attention like a hand around my throat. I tried to move, to warn, to fight. The rope cut my wrists. The man leaned close and whispered, "Calm." He said I should stop pretending these bodies were just clues. He said they were invitations. He said the dead did not want to be used. He said they wanted to be worn. He said soon I would not snap back. He said soon my own body would be the one nobody found. The shadow pressed in and the room dimmed. I heard a crackle like a radio tuning. I heard my own voice, distant, calling my name. Marcus, Marcus. It was not coming from outside. It was coming from inside the darkness. I realized then that the visits were stacking, that every body I woke in left a piece behind, that the pieces were learning my shape. The man stepped back and opened a drawer. Not a dresser this time, a metal cabinet like a morgue drawer. Inside was a mirror, propped upright. He angled it so I could see. I saw Elena's face, bruised, eyes wet. And behind her, in the reflection, I saw my own face. Not my real face. The wrong one. The smooth one, the dark eyes, the stretched smile. It stood close, as if it had been waiting for this. The wrong me raised a hand and placed it on Elena's shoulder in the glass. Elena's body shuddered under my skin. The man watched, pleased. He said it was ready. He said I had fed it well. The shadow in the doorway deepened, like a mouth opening. I tried to scream, but the tape held. I tried to thrash, but the ropes held. I tried to close my eyes, but the mirror held me. The wrong me leaned closer in the reflection. It opened its mouth, and my own voice came out again. It said it was tired of watching. It said it wanted to wake up. Then the world snapped, violent, like a bone breaking. I woke up on the floor of that floral basement room, in my own body. My wrists were bleeding where rope burns had appeared. My mouth tasted like tape and metal. My phone was ringing, loud, insistent. Elena's name flashed on the screen. I answered, voice raw. Elena was shouting. She said Captain Vance sent a team to my apartment, and I was not there. She said Internal Affairs was asking where I went. She said Tessa called her, crying, because she had gotten a message. Alina said the message had my name in it. Alina asked where I was. I looked at the open drawer, the dark that swallowed light. I heard footsteps upstairs, moving fast now. I told Elena through clenched teeth to trace my location. I told her to bring units. Elena asked what was happening. I told her Elena was alive, and we had minutes. Elena asked how I knew. I did not answer. I could hear the man above laughing. I grabbed my gun and ran up the stairs. The door at the top was open. Rain air rushed in, cold and sharp. The man was gone. Outside, taillights disappeared into the dark. I sprinted to my car, hands shaking, and drove like the road was on fire. I did not know exactly where Elena was. Not by address, but I had smells, sounds, impressions. I followed them like a blood trail. Train yard clanks, a diner vent smell, a turn where the road dipped, an alley where trash water pooled. I found an old service road behind a row of storage units. A light flickered at the far end. I stopped, jumped out, and ran. The unit door was half open. Inside, a bulb swung. There was a metal cabinet against the wall. I heard a muffled sob. I found Elena on the floor, wrists bound, mouth taped, eyes wide. She stared at me like she thought I was another trick. I ripped the tape off, and she gasped, sobbing. She grabbed my sleeve and begged me not to leave her. I cut the rope, hands clumsy with panic. Sirens wailed in the distance. Elena was coming. I helped Elena up, and she clung to me, shaking. She kept whispering one thing over and over. She said he said my name. She said he kept saying Marcus. She asked me why. I told her it did not matter. I told her she was safe now. But when I said it, my voice did not sound like mine. It sounded slightly too smooth. Elena looked up at me, confused. She touched my cheek like she was checking my face. Her hand trembled. She said my eyes looked different for a second. Then sirens got closer, and the moment broke. Elena arrived first, gun drawn, scanning. She saw Elena and rushed forward, relief flashing across her face. Then her eyes landed on me, and her relief froze. She stared at my wrists, at the blood, at the way I held myself. She asked quietly if I slept. I did not answer. Behind Elena, uniforms poured in. Paramedics came, blankets, questions, radios crackling. Elena was led away, still sobbing. Elena stayed with me, eyes fixed, searching. She asked me what I saw. I told her enough to point at the storage unit, the cabinet, the mirror. She went inside, and I followed. The metal cabinet was open. The mirror inside it was gone. In its place was something worse. A thin layer of water pooled at the bottom. River water. Alina stared at it, then at me. She whispered that it was not raining inside. I tried to speak, but my throat locked. The bulb swung overhead, and the shadows stretched. For a second, I saw my silhouette on the wall. Then I saw another silhouette behind it, overlapping. It moved when I did not. Alina saw it too, because she flinched hard. She looked at the wall like it had teeth. She asked what that was. I told her I did not know. That was the truth, and it tasted like defeat. After that night, things unraveled fast. Internal affairs questioned me, hard, relentless. Captain Vance stopped looking at me like a miracle. He looked at me like a problem. Dr. Shaw treated my wrists and asked me why I had rope burns twice. I told her I had nightmares. She told me nightmares did not leave evidence in your skin. Tessa did not come back. She sent a message through her sister, asking for her keys. Alina started sleeping in her car, outside my building some nights. She said she was watching my back. I knew she was watching for cracks. I started fighting sleep like it was an enemy. I drank coffee until my hands shook. I taped my eyelids open during paperwork. I walked circles in my apartment at night, light on, curtains drawn. It did not matter. Sleep does not need permission. It just takes you. One morning, I woke up on my kitchen floor. My mouth was full of sand. My nails were packed with mud. There were wet footprints leading from my couch to my sink. Not my footprints. Smaller, bare. I stared at them until my vision blurred. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It said I found you. I deleted it, hands shaking. The next night, I set up my living room like a bunker. Lights on, chair in the center, a rope tied to my waist and anchored to the radiator. A note on the table with my rules, rewritten clean. I told myself if I slept, the rope would keep my body here. I told myself that mattered. I sat in the chair and listened to my own breathing. Hours passed, slow and heavy. My eyes burned. My head dipped. I jerked awake, heart pounding. The lights flickered once. Then the apartment went still. Not quiet. Still, like the air was holding its breath. In the hallway, the bathroom mirror caught the light. I could see it from the chair, a bright rectangle. I tried not to look. Rule 4. Do not look for a mirror. My eyes drifted anyway, drawn like a magnet. In the glass, I saw my living room. I saw myself in the chair. And behind me, in the reflection, I saw the wrong me. It stood with its hands on my shoulders like it owned them. Its smile was wide, patient. It leaned closer to my ear in the reflection. My own mouth opened, but I did not speak. The wrong me spoke through my reflection. It said it was my turn to be missing. It said Detroit had plenty of places to hide a body. It said the dead were tired of waiting for me to visit. It said they were coming to get what I owed. My chest tightened. I tried to stand, and the rope at my waist pulled, keeping me in place. The wrong me laughed in the mirror. Then my eyelids got heavy, heavier than gravity. I fought, biting my tongue, tasting blood. It did not matter. The pull was not just sleep now. It was a hand around my mind. My eyes closed. I woke up face down on cold concrete. My cheek stuck to something damp. My lungs burned, and my mouth tasted like pennies. I tried to lift my hands and found they were bound. The rope was tight, biting deep. I heard water dripping nearby, steady, patient. I turned my head and saw a storm drain. The grate was bent. The dark below, it felt like a mouth. And somewhere above me, far away, I heard my own voice calling my name, like a man searching for someone who would never be found.